come on here, 8 o'clock in the east, 5 a.m. on the west coast. We have some really disturbing developments. Officials overseas are releasing chilling new information on the crash of that Germanwings plane in France. And what they are saying this morning is that the co-pilot of that plane appears to have crashed it deliberately.
So they've been poring over the cockpit voice recorder from that flight, and here's what they're now saying, that they've listened to the last 30 minutes of conversation in the cockpit between the pilot and the co-pilot. They were speaking amicably during that time. Toward the end of that tape, the pilot tells the co-pilot to take over because he's going to take what is a natural call, probably to use the restroom, and then the pilot gets locked out. And the co-pilot, while still in the cockpit, goes completely silent, but they can hear the pilot outside pounding on the door, trying to smash the door in, and even some screaming from passengers.
And what we've now learned is that the co-pilot, according to authorities, accelerated the descent at that point using the monitoring system to speed up the descent as it approached the mountains. We want to get to Keir Simmons. He's our correspondent. He's actually near the crash site, and France has been monitoring this news conference as well. Keir, good morning. What else can you fill in for us?
Savannah, good morning. This is absolutely stunning and devastating news. And remember, we're talking about this A320 flying into the mountain range behind me here. And what we are now hearing from the French prosecutor is that this co-pilot, the French prosecutor says, deliberately manipulated the controls of the plane to make it descend thousands of feet into the Alps here behind me. And as you mentioned, they say, and what they are doing is analysing this black box recording of what was going on. They are saying that they can hear the pilot banging on the door, trying to get in while the co-pilot is doing this. The prosecutor's office says, we assume that he meant to destroy the plane and have asked the German authorities for information on his personality. They say there was no response from the co-pilot, but right up until the moment of impact on the mountains here, you can hear him breathing. So they say he was alive right up to the moment of this crash, guys.
Yeah, but Keir, going back to this conversation they were having, there was nothing out of the ordinary in the conversation that the pilot and the co-pilot were having prior to the pilot getting up to take that break and leave the cockpit.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just looking down to see exactly what they said. I'm told they say during the last 20 minutes, the two pilots spoke naturally, and then the commander prepared a briefing for the pilot, and then he asked the co-pilot to take command, and then we listen and hear him push his chair back and get out and go out of the cockpit. They don't appear to know why he left, but as you say, he may well just have been going out for a short break for natural reasons. And then what happens is that the co-pilot starts to change the speed of the plane and starts to change the altitude of the plane, and the plane begins to descend down into this mountain range. You just shudder to think what must have been going on the rest of the plane as they realize what is happening. And as you mentioned, you can hear the pilot trying to get back in again. But what we know about this door into the cockpit is that it is possible for a pilot inside on his own to prevent anyone else from coming in. Normally that is for very good security reasons. In this case, it appears to have been used by this co-pilot in order to kill himself and kill the other 149 souls who are on board this plane.
And Keir, that raises the question, who is this co-pilot? I don't believe we have a name released publicly. We've been told that he had 650 hours of flying time, which we've been told is not that much, relatively speaking. Was he on any terror watch list? Do you know his nationality?
We think he is German. We don't know that much about him. In fact, they suspiciously, we began to think, have not been releasing the name of the pilot and the co-pilot as we began to get this news that perhaps something very, very wrong had gone on in the minutes before the crash. We know, as you mentioned, that the co-pilot had this 630 hours of flying time, that he had undergone a training and then had joined Germanwings, this small airline that is part of Lufthansa, back in 2013, so he hadn't been flying for that long. Another question, by the way, Savannah and Matt, is going to be, why was one of the pilots allowed to stay in the cockpit on their own, given that we know, and this may not actually be compliant with regulations, given that we know that it is possible for someone on their own in a cockpit to prevent anyone else from coming inside. And we assume, too, that nobody on board the plane was able to even contact anyone on the ground. We know that the plane did not put out a mayday signal. There was no emergency indicated to the control tower. At the control tower, they're simply trying to work out what is going on as this plane descends in silence. So there are going to be many questions from this, but at the moment, just absolute shock here, really, about what we are finding out about why that plane dropped into this mountain range.
All right, Keir, thank you very much. Let's